All right, we'll go ahead and call this Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in order this Wednesday, January 11th, 2023 at the hour of 7 p.m. First item on the agenda here tonight is our Pledge of Allegiance. If you all rise and please follow with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 2 on our agenda is our roll call. Commissioner Hammer?
Here.
Commissioner Proctor?
Here.
Commissioner Sloan? Here. Commissioner Robinson? Here. Commissioner Jensen?
Here.
Commissioner Dunn?
Here.
Go ahead and excuse Commissioners Goches. We'll go ahead and recognize Councilwoman Manzione and Councilman Hanson and our attorney Roger Baker. Also Andrew Agard and Jim Bolse are in attendance with us tonight, and our minutes taker in the back. Number 3 on our agenda here is a public hearing and decision on a conditional use permit request by Zach Spencer to authorize a personal storage facility, mini storage, use on 2.83 acres of property located at 1121 Utah Avenue in the LI Light Industrial Zoning District. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Commissioners. The proposed conditional use permit involves the parcel that is highlighted in red on the aerial photograph. You'll notice that it is south of Utah Avenue and east of the railroad and west of 1100 West. The property is currently vacant, undeveloped ground. The property currently bears the light industrial zone, as do the properties to the south and then to the east. And then we have some RR1 zoning to the north and then to the southwest of the subject property. The applicant is requesting a conditional use permit for personal storage facility in order to construct storage units on the site. You may be familiar with this property as they did do a conditional use permit 2 years ago for the same property. However, they did not act on that conditional use permit and it has since expired. So they are again applying for a conditional use permit, getting ready to start construction on the project. Well, to move forward with the project. I don't have a site plan to provide you. They didn't give me a site plan to look at with the application. So with that, I'll state the staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit with the basic conditions listed in your staff report. If you have any questions, try and answer them for you.
All right, let's bring this back to the commission for any questions for staff. Seeing none, this does require a public hearing, so I will go ahead and open the public hearing. If you would please, if you have anything to discuss on this particular item, please approach the podium. State your name for the record, and then right back to the minutes table to write your name for the record. Seeing no one approach, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing on this and bring this back to the commission for any other further questions or comments. All right, I'll entertain a motion on number 3 on our agenda tonight.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the conditional use permit request by Zach Spencer to authorize personal storage facility application P22-1379 based on the findings and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report dated 4 January 2023.
I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Robinson. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second from Commissioner Jensen. We'll take this table for a vote. Commissioner Hammer?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn?
Aye.
I also vote aye. That one passes 7-0. Number 4 on our agenda is a public hearing and recommendation on a zoning map amendment request by Mike Davey to reassign the zoning for approximately 1 acre of property located at the northwest corner of 2200 North Barra Boulevard intersection from the RR5 Rural Residential Zoning District to the R18 Residential Zoning District. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Commissioners. As the Commission is aware, I'm sure, there is a brand new high school being built located behind the Home Depot. And usually with the high school, you'll see an associated seminary building. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints wishes to construct a new seminary on the property highlighted in red in the aerial photograph. The property rests immediately northwest of the intersection of 2200 North and Barra Boulevard. The current zoning, as mentioned, is RR5. RR5 is a rural residential zone which requires 5-acre lots. That's a big lot. And it also requires increased setbacks. The minimum setbacks for the RR5 zone are 20 feet for side yards. So it's considerably more than what you would have in a standard residential zone. The church would like to rezone it to R18 in order to eliminate the 5-acre lot size requirement, which is far in excess of what their seminary buildings require, and also to reduce the setbacks to more manageable setbacks such as 6 feet and 20 feet, which is what is found in the R18. Excuse me, on the side yard in the R18, it's 8 feet, but it's a considerable reduction from what the RR5 requires. The land use map of the general plan is medium-density residential. The medium-density residential designation encourages or requires the R17, R18, and R110 zoning districts, so the request to rezone to R18 does comply with the city's land use map of the general plan. So that's the particulars of the application. If the Planning Commission has any questions about that, I'm happy to answer those for you.
Okay, we'll bring this back to the commission for questions or comments for staff. Hearing none, this also requires a public hearing, so I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for this particular item on our agenda tonight. If you would, please, if you have anything to say to this item, approach the podium, state your name for the record. Seeing no one approach, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring this back to the commission for any further questions or comments. All right, I'll entertain a motion on this item tonight.
I'll make a motion.
All right, Commissioner Jensen.
I move we forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the Twila Senior Seminary zoning map amendment requested by Mike Davey to reassign the zoning from the RR5 residential zone to the R1-8 residential zone, application number P22-1343, based on the findings and subject to the conditions listed in the staff report dated January 5th, 2023.
I have a positive recommendation from Commissioner Jensen. Do I have a second?
I'll make a second.
I got a second from Commissioner Proctor. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor.
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan.
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson.
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen.
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn.
Aye.
I am Chairman Hamilton. I also vote aye. This is a positive recommendation, 7-0, heading up to the City Council. Number 5 on our agenda tonight is a public hearing and a recommendation on a zoning map amendment request by D.R. Horton to amend the terms of the PUD, Planned Unit Development, zoning overlay assigned to the Western Acres Development on 85.4 acres located at approximately 2000 North Copper Canyon Drive in the MR16 PUD zoning district. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Commissioners. So this zoning map amendment is slightly unique to what you would see with a standard zoning map amendment in that we are not amending the actual zoning with this application. We are amending the PUD qualifications and standards that are associated with the zoning. When the Western Acres development was approved, they also approved it, or the zoning also included a planned unit development. And the PUD included some specifications or some changes to the design specifications as found in the Twila City Multifamily Residential Design Guidelines, which PUD overlay allows them to do. The property, as you can see, is quite large and encompasses pretty much everything shaded in red, and is located south of Pine Canyon Road and east of Main Street. They are currently constructing on the site. Phases 1 and 2A have received approval. And then the zoning of the property is MR16 with a PUD overlay. I should point out that the zoning map is not entirely accurate. When they did the PUD application, there were portions of the development that included sections that were R17 that were also governed by the PUD. And this map that was provided by the applicant at that time does demonstrate how the zoning is. So our zoning map right now isn't correct. We need to get with our map specialist and make sure that they correct that. But this is the zoning as it actually is, and you can see the R17 portions versus the MR16 portions. The applicant is requesting to amend the standards and qualifications of the PUD overlay. The staff report included what those standards are currently, what they are required to develop under currently. And they wish to amend or change one of those and then add a second one. And these are the conditions that they would like to consider. Adding vinyl to the allowed list so they can use that. And then, without percentage requirements already removed, they could potentially do the entire structure in a vinyl siding. Now, the applicant has indicated that they have a new vinyl product, and they would I think he's right there. He'll probably want to talk to you about that. But that's one request. Right now, the way the ordinance is structured is they're required to do the standard masonry product, fiber cement, stucco. They were exempted by the PUD from doing 50% of the facade in brick or stone. And vinyl siding is actually permissible currently in the ordinance. However, I believe they would want a little more latitude in regarding to using more vinyl on the structure. And then number 2, eliminating the requirement for one covered parking stall per multifamily residential unit. Now, most of the townhomes in this development have 2-car garages and 2-car driveways. However, there are some units in the development that do not have garages. And in that situation, the ordinance requires 2 parking stalls. One of those parking stalls must be covered by a garage or a carport or some other situation. And they wish to remove that one covered parking stall requirement from this development and allow them to move forward with just 2 parking stalls without them being covered. So that's the request here. Again, we're not changing the zoning, but we are amending the PUD, or they're proposing to amend the PUD qualifications for the Western Acres development. And if the Planning Commission has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer those for you.
All right, let's bring this back to the commission for questions for staff.
This wouldn't reply retroactively, would it, to the phases already approved? Retroactive to the,
Say that again, please.
would it apply to the first 2 phases that have already been approved? It wouldn't be retroactive, would it?
Well, that's a determination that the Planning Commission and City Council could make. We would encourage that it does not, because the previous 2 phases were approved and reviewed under the existing PUD standards and qualifications. But that's staff's take on that. I guess ultimately it comes down to you guys and the City Council to decide.
I have a question, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. Mr. Agard, how many parking spaces does this affect?
Oh, let's see. Phases 1 and 2, if I remember correctly, they had about 36 parking stalls. So it would affect 18 of
18?
those.
Okay.
Now, that's not entirely, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm trying to visualize the project in my mind, and I
Okay,
think
that's
that's
fine.
about what it is.
I just wanted to ballpark more than anything. Thanks, Andrew.
The majority of their units are not the garage list. The majority include the garages. So this would affect a minority of the
Okay.
product.
And I remembered that, but I couldn't remember how much of a minority. So, good, thanks.
Any other questions for staff? All right, this item also does require a public hearing. If the applicant is here, we'll hold off to the end, and then we'll give you some time by yourself. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing now. Anybody wanting to speak on this particular item, go ahead and approach the podium. State your name for the record, please, and then head back to the minutes table to write your name for the record. Seeing no one approach, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and go ahead and invite the applicant up if they'd like to speak to the commission.
Hello. Sorry, I'm getting over a sinus infection, so my voice is really not normal. I want to first introduce myself a little bit. I have ties to Tooele and the county. Enos Stuckey is my great-great-grandfather. He settled Clover in 1853. And William Jeffries also about the same time settled Grantsville, and this is on my mom's side. And I've got relatives that still live here. I have my grandparents and an aunt and 2 uncles are buried in the Tooele Cemetery. I've spent many days, many weeks, months growing up in Tooele County, and so I have somewhat of an emotional tie to the area. And I don't want you to think that I'm just some developer that's coming in here. I'm an employee of D.R. Horton. We've been building in this state for 30 years. We are one of the largest builders in the state, as well as the largest in the country, as far as home builders. I'm not saying that to brag, just we're here for the long term. We want to be in your community for the long term, and we want to make affordable homes available to your kids, your grandkids, your nieces, nephews. now and in the future. So with that,
If you could just state your name for the record,
Oh,
too,
yeah.
please, and then we can address you by
thank you,
name.
and I'll put it down here. My name is Mike DiCarlo. And so first, do you have any questions of me about what we're trying to do here?
Is there any questions from the commission for the applicant? Yes, Commissioner Sloan.
This probably is self-evident, but just
Sure.
for the record, what is your purpose in making this change?
Yeah, the why. Okay, the reason why is we're always focused on what families need, and right now they need a more affordable home. And to make that more affordable, this is a product that will allow us to do that. It's a cost savings to them. We don't have a price on the home yet. The market sets the price. But if we can lower our costs, that helps us make that adjustment to the homeowner. And just to let you know, this vinyl product, I've got a sample of it here. This is just one piece of it, but really we can do a lot of different styles. This isn't just the only style, and so we have a few renderings that really aren't doing it justice, but there's board and batten along with this, as well as some other styles that go along up in the eaves to break it up, so it's not looking like just all this straight vinyl going across the building on the front. The sides and the back, it will probably be like that. But for what is facing the public's view outside the community, it will look really nice. It's from the road, you don't see that it's some kind of inferior product. It's also materials evolve over time, right? And so, for example, you wouldn't think that you'd put vinyl flooring in $1 million home, but that's what's going in expensive homes now, is vinyl flooring, and because it's so durable and it looks nice. They have great colors schemes, and we'll have great color schemes with this. The product comes with a lifetime warranty, so whether the homeowner moves or stays there for a long time, doesn't matter, because the townhome is owned by the exterior is controlled and owned by the HOA, and so with a lifetime warranty on the product, that says something, I think, about the manufacturer of it. And we've used this across the country with great success, and it's well accepted by those that are in this market, the families in this market. So, any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
I have questions.
Commissioner.
Can I ask you two questions, Mr. DiCarlo?
Absolutely.
One, how new is this product?
How new is it? It's been around. I don't know exactly when they first came out with it.
Like new since the original PUD?
Not since the PUD,
Okay.
but the market's changed a bit, and we're trying to keep it affordable.
Okay.
Is the main reason.
Okay. And second, what about the parking stalls?
Yes, and on the parking, that also is a way to try and make the homes affordable. We know there are potential homeowners or people that are buying their first home where a covered parking isn't as important as actually owning the home and getting out of a rental environment. So that's really the purpose here, is we're trying to take somebody that wants to be a homeowner and help them do that.
Okay.
And to Mr. Proctor's point, we really would like it to create a consistent theme throughout the whole community. It's quite a large community with just under 800 townhomes, and this will be cover 251 townhomes. And so we would really like to have it retroactive for the whole zone. I know it's been approved, plats 1 and 2A are going through the, 2A is still going through the approval process, but as you know, you just approved the 2A preliminary plat, but we'd like this material to be, you know, the same theme, material theme throughout the community, you know, on the buildings. Yes. Oh, right. And we haven't even started vertical construction, so it's not like, we have some building permits into the city and we'll be pulling them soon, but we haven't started construction on the actual buildings yet. It's just land development that's been finished.
Okay. Anything else you can tell us about what you're requesting?
If there's any other questions.
Okay.
If not, I think we covered it.
Any other questions from the commission for the applicant? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, let's bring this back to the commission for any other further questions, comments? All right, this is a recommendation, so I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on this recommendation. We also need to understand that we need to make a decision also with the recommendation if we want to make this retroactive or as of now. So I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to move we forward a negative recommendation to the city council. It doesn't seem, I recognize the economic situation has changed since the PUD, but there's not enough there for me to think that we go back on what was previously decided and agreed upon by everyone. And so I see no need to move it back.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I've got a negative recommendation from Commissioner Robinson and a second from Commissioner Hammer. Remember, this is a negative recommendation, so I'll take this to the table for a vote. Commissioner Hammer?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan? Aye. Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn?
Aye.
And I am Chairman Hamilton. I will vote no. This passes with a negative recommendation with a 6-1 vote.
Mr. Chairman, if I may butt in for just a moment, as I like to do whenever there's a question of a recommendation that either is a split vote or has some commentary to it, your recommendation this evening is simply that. So I don't want to lead the public or the applicant or anyone else listening that this is a final decision. This will go still to the Planning Commission, or pardon me, to the council, with your recommendation that you have just voted on. As of right now, it is scheduled for next week's council agenda, which would be finalized later this week. So we encourage everyone to keep an eye on the agendas as they're posted for upcoming meetings.
Yes, thank you, sir. I appreciate that extra input. Always helpful. All right, moves us on to number 6 on our agenda is a decision on a conditional use permit request by Christian Martinez for a dwelling multifamily use at 432 South Main Street in the MUG Mixed Use General Zoning District on 1.33 acres. This was also tabled from the October 26, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Mr. Agard.
Thank you, Commissioners. The chair is correct. This was tabled from a previous meeting. Just to refresh you as to where it's at, it's located on the west side of Main Street, south of 400 South and west of 50 West, just across the street from those hotels and the cemetery and so forth. And then the property is zoned mixed use general, as our properties to the north and south, and we have some R17 located to the west. The applicant is proposing the construction of some apartment buildings. And when we did the hearing last time, there was some questions brought up regarding traffic impact, and the Planning Commission requested that the applicant conduct a traffic impact study. They have done that, and the study has come back to us, and that was included in your packets that you received. I have a slide here that just shows the basic findings. And essentially what the traffic study recommended is that in order to accommodate fire trucks, 50 West may need to be widened to have a width of 20 feet between the project access and 400 South. They also determined, as when they completed the study, that Main Street does not require any improvements. So Main Street as it is fine and will satisfy what the impact the apartments will generate. So after we had the hearing, the fire chief and Jim and Paul and I took a ride in one of their very large ladder trucks, and we went out and parked along 50th West and put out the support rigging and saw how much width was actually there with the asphalt. Those pictures were included in your packets. And so one of the conditions in your staff report is that the applicant widen their frontage, widen the asphalt to 30 feet to accommodate that large emergency vehicle and others. And the site plan that you have here before you shows the area highlighted in yellow. You'll note that the traffic study also indicated extending that asphalt width to 400 South. Staff investigated the possibility of requiring that as a condition of approval as well. And I consulted the city attorney about that, and I included his response in your staff report. He emailed that back to me. It was very well written, and hopefully you understood it as well as I did. If you'd like to dive into that further, I'm sure Mr. Baker can explain it better than I can. But we're recommending approval of the conditional use permit with the conditions in the report, particularly the one being that their frontage be widened to 30 feet of asphalt as per the fire chief and fire marshal's recommendation. And that's about all I have. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the Planning Commission.
All right, let's bring this back to the commission. Do we have any questions for staff?
Have they, yeah, I do. Have they gotten UDOT authorization for access to 36?
I have not seen any UDOT approvals yet. He did indicate to me that he has submitted an application with them, but I have not received it. So he's working on it.
Any other questions from the commission for staff?
I
Yes,
have
Commissioner
a
Jensen.
question. Maybe Mr. Baker could go over the widening down to 400 South a little bit, speak to that.
Of course, you went right to the hardest question.
I know.
So as you saw in the staff report, the law requires two things. One, that there be a connection between what you're requiring of the developer and the impacts the developer is creating on the city. The next is that whatever exaction you require has to be proportionate in value to the cost of the impact. And the Utah courts have stated that that needs to not just be proportional, it needs to be equivalent, which can be hard to figure out sometimes. You need experts to do studies on impacts and mitigations. And I did not reach a firm opinion in the staff report. So the question, there does seem to be a connection, or a nexus is the word that the courts use, because first of all, the project fronts the street. Secondly, it is one of two accesses to the project. And third, there is a necessary emergency response nexus coming from that direction. So I think there is a good argument that there is the nexus is present. Then the question is, what is the impact upon the city? And is the city's requiring improvements proportionate to the weight of that impact? And I gave two extreme examples. If it's $1 million cost, then it's clearly not going to be proportionate. But if it's a relatively low cost, for example, to require an additional 5 feet of widening on one side of the road or the other to enable the emergency apparatus to respond, then I think it's probably proportionate. I'm speaking in probablys because this is not a precise analysis. It is picked apart later by courts, The best I can tell you is I think there is a nexus, and I think a low or small amount of improvements to 400 West is probably proportional. If you want a 30-foot asphalt swath all the way to 400 South, I think that exceeds proportionality. I can't tell you by how much, it's not precise. I think that's the best I can do for you.
Thank you.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Baker on this particular item? All right, thank you, guys.
I would like to follow up and
Yes,
just
please.
say, if you are inclined to impose such a condition, you have to first go through the exercise of identifying as specifically as you can the anticipated detrimental effect or impact that you are trying to mitigate with the condition. So you have to first make a finding of the anticipated detrimental effects or impacts, and only then can you say, how can we mitigate that impact?
All right. That having been said, we'll bring this back to the commission. Any other further questions or comments? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this conditional use permit request. Is the applicant here? Yeah, we already had our public hearing on this one, so this will not. Well, excuse me, sir, we've already had the public hearing for this, and it doesn't require a public hearing tonight, so. Excuse me, sir, there is no public hearing tonight. If you please calm down for a second.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, guys. Sorry for that. I had to get some advice from my attorney there. He said it is my purview to open the public hearing if I see it do fit. So for the focus of the community right now, we'll go ahead and open another public hearing so we can get your comments. We'd love to hear from you, so come on up and please write your name and speak your name for the record, and we'd love to hear your comments right now.
All right. My name is Brent Larson. I originally came because I was concerned about on the number of units going in there and the traffic along 50 West, along with the issue of water flow down 50 West. I am especially concerned right now about this proposed widening of 50 West. There isn't room there. There may be room along the proposed development because the developer could take some of their own property and turn that into the street. There's not room to continue that all the way to 400 South. I took some rough measurements from the St. Clair's property, from their fence line to my fence line. There's about 33, almost 34 feet in between there. From his fence to where the street is about 10 feet. On my side, there's about 6 feet from my fence to where the street is. There's also a series of telephone poles along there that are about 4 feet away from his fence line. So if you take off that 4 feet right there, you're already less than the 30 feet. And there has to be room between the street and the property lines. Otherwise, when the snow plow goes down, where's it going to throw the snow? And the road would also have to be they're constructed with the high point in the middle so water flows off, and that would actually exacerbate the problem that I was concerned about in the first place with the water flow coming towards my home. So I would encourage you not to impose that requirement to continue the 30 feet all the way to 400 South.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Excuse me, I haven't done this for a while. My name is Jeff St. Clair, and I'm going to tell you a little story. My dad was Ed St. Clair, and he built the house that my son lives in 1950. He lived in a one room with my mother and my older brother till they got it finished. He was mining in Ophir, trying to get it all done. And little by little, it worked out. He worked at the depot, mined a little back and forth, and he got it done. And I came along, and I grew up there. And it was a wonderful place to live. Right across the alley, right behind where Mr. Larson lives, Sterl Harris had his barn there. Famous guy that maybe a lot of people don't even know anymore. But I got to go visit with him all the time. And him and his buddies, all the old Tuella guys that come ride horses with him every day. Anyway, my wife and I bought the house from my dad, and it never had any water. You know, when my dad owned it, we had a ditch from the irrigation system that ran through the middle of the yard, right through the back. We couldn't use any of the water. We just had to kind of jump over it and back and forth. But we wanted to have a garden, and my mom had a little small garden there. She did great. And so when I got the house, I had the availability of a share of settlement water came along, so I bought that. The yard was still too small to do a whole lot with, but it sure helped keep the lawns green. Later on, my dad bought this ground from Bob Brown, and Bob Brown had a son-in-law that had an electrical shop that was directly behind ours, McPhee. And I talked to him. He was sick a few years ago, and we were able to purchase that piece of ground just for a garden. Well, my son got in there and he built one of the best gardens. I couldn't imagine how he could get that to do so well. And when we put in that apartment building right next to it, there'll be no garden. I live on 700 South, and my house faces north, and my front yard, I can't get anything on the north side. It's going to be worse there because it's a little taller. So I guess the other thing I wanted to tell you was when they do that study for UDOT, I can't imagine them saying it's okay to pull out on Main Street. If you do a little research, how many bad accidents have we had there? God, people come zooming in and they just all of a sudden realize they're in Tuella. I know we all try to enforce the speed limit out there, but I've lived there my whole life, and they just come screaming through there, come on that hill, and we've had a lot of bad accidents just because people are unaware. Can you imagine people pulling out of there and trying to head north? I just think we're going to have some real problems, and that won't work. So what are they going to do? They're going to come down and go right by the house, down the alley 50 West, and they just put a new house over there across the street. Everyone that comes down that alley is going to point in their windows. It's something else they got to deal with. But that's it. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mr. St. Clair.
Okay, I'm going to try to not be intimidated by you guys this time. I apologize for...
I just got to keep the peanut
I
gallery down
understand
a little bit, so.
But I'm Zach St. Clair, and I
Thanks, sir.
live down there right behind the proposed development. And first off, this traffic study, I don't know when this was done, obviously in November, I guess, but there's the new development being built right up the alley, the other side of Gophers. You guys are probably aware of that. Well, that's not done yet, and that's going to put a whole lot of traffic onto the roads. So what does the traffic study even tell us? If that's not even, there's no traffic coming from there yet, but there will be.
It's projected.
And reading that traffic study saying that there's going to be an average of 210 cars a day coming and going on the average day, we'll never get out of our yard again. Okay, no one's going to pull onto Main Street. If you imagine where the proposed spot is to pull out onto Main Street, it turns right into a turning lane. You can't turn left into a turning lane. They're not going to go right. There's nothing there. So where are all these cars going to go? Down the road, down the alley, which it is an alley. You want to call it a street, but it's always been an alley. But how are they going to fit? If they can go out onto Main Street, like, they're not going to turn left. How will that happen? And I'm getting intimidated by you guys.
Don't get intimidated.
We're just trying to listen.
We're just listening to you. We don't have any answers yet, so we're just listening to you.
But this really affects us. This is going to be like the end of our everything. Like he said, we can't build a garden in the darkness. It'll be just nothing but shadow in our yard all the time. 3-story high building that close to the backyard. You guys wouldn't want it, I know that. Am I missing anything? I'll let her go. I'm getting a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. St. Clair. I appreciate it.
My name is Tina Romano, and I live with Zach St. Clair. And I've only lived there for 10 years. And in that alley, we have to park coming in. So the back end of our cars face the alley. So there's been people up and down that alley, a lot of meth heads, a lot of crackheads. It's dark. And when the snow comes, the snowplow drivers push all the snow towards the back of our car. So with all these apartments coming and all these people, you got 2 cars per family, probably 3. Like he said, if there is a fire, say there is a fire, we have a fire hydrant right in front of our house. We can't even park in front of our house when my kids come over because there's no place to park. With that being said, we do have a garden. You know, you only get so much sun. You got a 3-story high apartment complex. You got people looking into our yard. This person who wants to build this apartment complex, he's not going to live there. He doesn't know. Do you want this in your backyard? You don't want people looking into your yard and seeing your children play, your grandkids play. This is old school Tooele where we live. The alley is so small, when I drive my crossover through, he has to pull over so I can go by him. How are we going to get out of our house? So we're begging this not to happen. Go somewhere else. There's plenty of land. We have wildlife that comes down. We have deer. We have raccoons. We have, you name it, it's in our backyard. We can see the park from our backyard. When my grandkids come, I can see them from my backyard. Now I have to worry about people who live in these apartments looking at my grandkids. I don't want that. But, until you live there and then, you're trying to fight the fight as much as you can, you really don't have nothing to say about it because everybody else is making that decision for you. But can you imagine going outside and you're outside, doing your gardening or just relaxing in the sun, and all of a sudden you got people looking at you in the back over your fence? That's all we wanted to say. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Romano. Appreciate it.
He wants to add some more stuff.
If you can make it quick.
Yeah, really quick. When she mentioned the land up against the fence, they've already come and plowed up all the dirt up higher, so they're 2 feet up above us. Above our, we have a 6 feet fence. From the other side of the fence, it's only about 4 feet. It should be 6 feet, but they came through and plowed it all flat. Broke 3 of our, well, one of them, to be honest, was already cracked. One fence post was cracked, so they broke 2 of our fence posts doing this. So when they build that, that's how much taller than the fence, and 3 stories above it. So we're gonna see, like, when I counted, what is it, like 36 windows or something? There's no hiding. No hiding at all.
And we have to do a 3-point turn just to even get out of the driveway. You have to literally back up to Larson's yard to even go this way to even go to work. And he has 4-wheelers and trailers. Let alone 3-point turn, you gotta be going like this all day with all the apartment people coming down the alley. All right, we're done.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. I'll keep going.
Oh, crap.
I'm Doug Newell. I don't live over there, but I do have a daughter and a son-in-law and a grandson and soon-to-be granddaughter that have to live in West Jordan because they can't find any place here in Tooele to live. Now, I can commiserate or understand why they don't want them there, but if not here, where? Everybody doesn't want it in their backyard. So if we listen to everyone, these developments are never going to get put anywhere. And as to the alley and the widening and whatnot, it sounded like to me when I read the report that the fire department was concerned about the area by the buildings and not necessarily the portion from the apartments down to 400 South. And if the fire truck can turn and make that turn in there, they're not going to set up or extend their supports down at that area if there's a fire in the apartments. They would come up closer to the apartments and set up their equipment there. Whether there's room or not, that, I mean, you could look at what the actual width is supposed to be on the city plan and see where it is, because fences get put wherever they want to be a lot of times, or where they think they're supposed to be. So there's a lot of issues that need to be considered when, trying to extend the whole 50 West. But I think it makes sense for it to be addressed in the portion that affects the apartments. Now, I'm in favor of wise growth and important growth, but it still needs, if we sit there and deny everything, we're not going to grow. We're going to start to lose people, and we're going to start to die. So I just wanted to say my 2 bits. So,
Thank you, I appreciate that, Doug.
I'm quite a bit shorter than him. My name's Isaac Riches. I am actually the engineer that is working on the project here. Christian asked me to come over and sit in and talk to you, and so I can answer any questions that you have. Commissioner Proctor, to your question with UDOT, we have started the process with UDOT in an effort on my end to try and keep plans clean with multiple review agencies. The next submittal that we have with UDOT is kind of on hold right now with the 50th West improvements that we're looking to do, so that I can add those to it and submit and kind of have one copy that we're submitting through the city and then also through UDOT, and just more of a housekeeping thing that way. But I have had conversations with UDOT. UDOT, at looking at this, the initial comments that they have had at looking at this is they're looking at site triangles and keeping things that might, be a visual blocker for traffic hazards and things like that. They haven't really made any comments other than the biggest concern is that it's going uphill, and so I have to do different calculations as to figuring out what that site triangle really is, turning onto Main Street there for adapting it to a hill. But other than that, they haven't really had many comments or worry right there on Main Street. As to the 50th West, to what I think Mr. Newell was talking about is based off of the survey that was done out there and based off of research from surveys that have been out there is the right-of-way on 50th West is 33 feet, which is ample enough for the 30-foot improvements that is being asked there. To that point, and you know, and I don't know fully. I need to talk to Andrew about this. You know, if we're going the full 30 feet in front of the property there, if that's curb and gutter, asphalt, and then it's just a 20-foot strip of asphalt that goes up to that, or you know, or if we're doing that curb and gutter all the way out to 4th North there. But anyway, that's kind of. I'm not going to address all of the comments that have been said. That's not really what my job is here, but just wanted to kind of come introduce myself, and I can take some questions from you guys if you have any. I'm happy to help that way. So.
All right, Mr. Richards, if you don't mind, if we have any questions for the commission. Mr. Baker.
Well, the members of the public, the neighbors that have been able to address you have identified an anticipated detrimental effect of raising the site elevation to make the site that much higher and the privacy concerns that much greater. I'm wondering if the developer can simply leave that northern elevation and cut into the southern elevation, retain there to minimize that impact at least that much.
You
Yes,
want me to
please.
talk on that? Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay. So to that point, I have looked long and hard at this site. There's some steep grades going east to west on that. And really the way to make it work without getting into structural sized, I mean, I guess retaining walls are all structurally designed. But as a civil engineer, I'm allowed to go up to about 3.5, 4 feet in size for structural size that way on a wall. Anytime you exceed that, you need to get it specifically looked at from a structural engineering standpoint. Which is going beyond where I'm at. And so by pushing it, because of the shape of the lot and the way that it sits, by trying to mess with this utilizes the lot really well, the way that we have it laid out. When you start to kind of play with that, what actually starts to happen is you're going to need to start to increase your retaining walls all along that southern edge to adjust for that. You're still bringing everything up, and then you're just going to be creating that same problem on the southern edge is what you're proposing on that northern edge. The walls up there on that northern edge are actually pretty, they're not real high. I mean, a couple of feet. We're not reaching the maximum as to what those retaining walls are at least for my design that way. But I have done a lot of different iterations to try and make that balance and work out so that's in the benefit of everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Rich. Is there any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you, sir. All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing for this particular item. Thank you all for your comments, much appreciated there. And I'll bring this back to the commission for further action.
Can I ask a question of staff? Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
please, Commissioner Ross.
Andrew, the right-of-way, I guess I was looking at the picture and trying to figure out exactly the 30-foot requirement based on the right-of-way and curb and gutter and all that stuff. The right-of-way is 33 feet, is that right? All the way through the area that along the frontage of this project, that we would want 30 feet asphalt of that 33?
Yes.
Okay, so there's plenty of space all along the frontage of this project to do everything that code requires, including the 30 feet of asphalt? Okay.
There was some mention of utility poles. Is that germane to what you just answered? Are they within that right of way?
Yes.
I need follow-up. What does that mean? I know that the poles are in the way, but what's your answer?
In regards to the right-of-way, there's sufficient width there to accommodate the 30 feet of asphalt. And the poles along the frontage will remain outside of the
33.
the right-of-way area.
Okay, thank goodness.
He's proposing the installation of sidewalk and curb and gutter as well along his frontage, so we believe there's sufficient room there to accommodate the improvements recommended by the fire department.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I misunderstood what you said.
I thought I missed it. Okay, I have a couple
Yep,
concerns.
please.
I have a lot of concerns. I drove down this street, and I can't picture where the extra footage comes from to make this road, this small road 33, but I'm going to count on that it does, even with the utility poles. I do have a concern about only requiring the improvement of this one section bordering this property, the continuity and what it would create down the road, meaning that's bad wording. Looking forward, like to just have this one section widened and then go back small, I just don't, continuity-wise, isn't that going to look weird? I don't know, that's my concern. Another, I'm not satisfied with the lack of the applicant willing to put in a retaining wall. I worry about the water runoff and some privacy issues too, but mostly just the water that's already a concern. So those are some of my concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner Hammer. Commissioner Dunn?
So my question is about parking on 50 West, because you know when with apartment buildings comes people who want to park on the roadway instead of in the parking, the available parking, especially if they have longer vehicles and they've come to visit or perhaps stay overnight. Obviously, with a 33-foot wide road, that would be an issue, correct?
That could be a potential problem. There is a possibility that the city council could look into that and red curb it or prohibit parking in that area, but we do have to admit there could be a possibility that somebody could park on that right-of-way. It's definitely something that could happen.
So they could red curb it, but there's no curb. So it would
Well,
be-
they're proposing curbing
Oh,
along
right,
their
right.
frontage.
Yeah, okay.
Can I, Mr. Chair, can I
Yes,
think out loud for just
Commissioner
kind of a
Robinson,
second?
please. This is a tough one.
Going back to Commissioner Hammer's concern about the water runoff and the retaining wall and building down into that southern edge, if that's something that we're concerned about, then we have to look at it, okay, if this is a concern, what happens to mitigate that? And if it's a safety concern based on water runoff or what's going to happen to that road because of the natural water that will flow, okay, and I'm spitballing, is that something that can scientifically, objectively be looked at for a project such as this, the impact that the water runoff will cause on the surrounding area on the frontage of that?
Well, that's what the civil engineer is supposed to do in designing this project, is to control where the flow of the stormwater goes as it comes off this development. And so that's what we do in the site plan design review process, is
Okay.
review that. That's what Paul does, is stormwater. And so we address that through the site plan
All
review
right, so that's
process.
something that is already built into the system to be looked at as we go further down the line.
It is.
So that doesn't really play into the conditional use because it doesn't, I guess, one of the things we need to consider with the conditional use is safety. And so if there's conditions we need to place onto the concerned safety, then we should have that purview to have it looked at now, should we deem it an unsafe thing. Mr. Baker, is that my spouting illogic things?
No, so there are two types of surface stormwater to consider. One is the stormwater that is already historically flowing through this property. This developer will have an obligation to safely route it from where it comes in to where it goes out. And like Andrew said, that Paul, the city engineer, will review that. The second type is the stormwater that's generated on-site by the addition of new impervious surface. And that will have to be engineered on-site for that water to be detained and then, or retained, but detention takes a smaller area. and then the water would slowly drain from where it is being detained in a controlled fashion. And that also will be evaluated by the city engineer based on our established requirements. That's not to say you can't find that stormwater is an anticipated detrimental effect from this development, and you can impose conditions to mitigate it. However, that condition will likely just be that the city engineer has to take care of it. And that's already in the staff report.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Thanks for humoring me, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Jensen, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to add on to Commissioner Dunn's comment a little bit. I think the parking is a concern back there since we're widening it to set up fire apparatus. I think one of our conditions might be to red curb it. Because if it's just barely wide enough for the apparatus as is, there probably shouldn't be people parking back there, and I think we should maybe think about adding that in.
Can I add to what you're saying? If your condition is to require a certain improved width to mitigate the adverse impact of fire apparatus not being able to safely approach and stage, then allowing parking would destroy that mitigation. So you would almost have to prohibit on-street parking in order for the condition of width improvement to have any meaning.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm rephrasing what I think your point is.
Yeah.
Roger, is that appropriate for us to do that at this point, or just that we're making we're granting a CUP, but so the city council is not something that has to deal with this? So that needs to be dealt with here, correct?
The city council could do it independent of the conditional use process because it's their road and they get to decide how to make that road safe. You can address the same concept through a different avenue of the conditional use process. So yes, I think you can address it. You just need to make your findings and then impose your condition.
You guys got that, city council? Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments for staff?
Chairman, can I ask Commissioner Hammer to clarify one thing? If you could, Commissioner, articulate maybe a little more what you mean by discontinuity. I'm not sure that by itself would be understood by a court as an adverse impact.
I'm looking for the picture. Sorry. Just looking at this one, I don't know that I can say it any better than I did when I was voicing my concern. I'm just looking at this parcel of property and thinking about where this would be widened, and if we don't require it to go all the way to 400 South, then I think it's a safety hazard to go from, 24.4 feet right now, and then it would widen to 33, and then it would go back to 24, going the other way, right? Is that what we're proposing?
I don't know how curb and gutter and park and sidewalk would play into those widths. I just don't know. So from the pavement, the edge of pavement may be continuous, and I don't know that either, but Jim, you may know better. Andrew, you may know better.
Commissioner Hammer, are you just talking about the aesthetics or the water runoff from that as well?
All of it. I think it all plays into it.
So if the frontage of this project is widened to 30 feet of asphalt, then you could technically drive along the frontage with a wider asphalt path and then jog back down to a more narrow asphalt section. I think that's where you're going in that you have more asphalt in one section, less asphalt in another. And
It's like
I don't know what kind of, what you can do about that.
Aesthetically, it's awful, but safety-wise, I don't know that
But it's not the first place that it's happened. We have places like that all over the city.
Yeah.
So we should add to it.
So I got concerned, but by putting the curb and gutter in that one section, it's gonna, and this permeable, non-permeable surface asphalt, and it's just gonna, the runoff that's coming down the hill is gonna hit that, and then theory accelerate into where it's non-curb and gutter and just tear that apart. And potentially flood the properties. So I would be saying we
Mr. Bolzer, did you have?
continue all the way to 400 South for runoff concerns. Also, still fire apparatus turning in and up on that thing, and there's going to be more than one fire truck that's going to be coming to a fire, and with the hydrant right there in front of their house, there's going to be, you're going to have theoretically a pumper truck staged right there in front of their house or right there at the end of the road to feed the other trucks up the road.
Mr. Bolzer?
Yeah, I'll just address your question and your suggestion regarding the runoff water coming down the road. As Mr. Agard and Mr. Bolzer, or Mr. Baker,
Mr.
sorry, I'm not referring to myself. I'm not going to take credit for what Mr. Baker's done. As they both alluded to and discussed earlier, one of the standard reviews for the site plan consideration, which comes after a CUP is approved, is the stormwater management. One of those stormwater management considerations is, I think it was Mr. Baker that mentioned, the water that is coming to the site and then either through or stopping in the site. And an applicant for a site plan is required to accommodate and deal with exactly what you're referring to. Any water that's coming to it, they have to provide for adequate conveyance through, which doesn't mean just letting it drop off at the end. There may be considerations to mitigate those impacts as it's leaving the site. And then certainly any impact that they're adding to by the development of the site also has to be accommodated and mitigated as well. So your point is well taken, that there is a consideration for water coming to the site, through the site, and then beyond. But that is a part of the standard review and mitigation that Mr. Hansen reviews as a part of the site plan review. So you're spot on in terms of your considerations. And hopefully we're a little ahead of the game in terms of your considerations by the fact that that's already built into our standard site plan review process.
Okay, but also assuming that more than one fire apparatus has to stage along there, can that be?
Depending on the type of emergency response, that's certainly possible. The photographs that you saw in your packet is actually the largest apparatus we have. If we get Commissioner Jensen, you may be able to speak to this better than I, but if there was a significant incident, for instance, heaven forbid, a significant fire that's tearing through one of those buildings, my guess is that apparatus would arrive in short order. And there would be multiple apparatus. But I think the question goes to what the type of incident is. Obviously, we examine things for the unfortunate worst possible scenario. But there may be scenarios where some of that apparatus is on site and not just strictly on 50 West. Beyond those generalized comments, that is outside of my wheelhouse for understanding emergency response. And so I don't want to speak for the fire department, certainly not for Chief McCoy or his staff. But I think there's a certain consideration to the type of response as well as how much and where it's located within the site, whether they would use the Main Street side, on site, the 50 West side, or all three.
Commissioner Dunn, did you have a question?
I'm still concerned about this street widening only partial as well. During certain weather conditions, of all of which we get here in Tooele, the visual of where the edges of the road is sometimes blurry. And with several of these residents parking up to the border of their property, you go from your 33-foot down to 24 feet so quickly, it's very possible that there could be damage that occurs as these vehicles are going up and down this road during inclement weather. And that's one of my big concerns. It's just, there's no consistency, so the consistency of where the traffic is flowing is in question.
Okay. Sounds like we've got a few detrimental effects that we can address. Water runoff will come with the site plan design. Parking issues is a big issue. And then the elevation and privacy issues. So does the commission have any other further questions or comments for, or just questions for staff? All right.
Chairman, add to your summary Commissioner Dunn's concern about safety of vehicles driving on, entering into suddenly into a narrower, improved surface that could lead to cars driving into the lot next door. If I paraphrase that correctly.
Thank you.
Yes. Safety of traffic with the different type of road going down that road. Okay, I appreciate that. With that being said, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the commission for further action on this. Obviously, we've found some detrimental effects, so our motion will have to include those effects, those findings of fact, and how we can mitigate those in order to approve this. So I'll entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Chair, can we discuss it a little bit more before a motion maybe?
Absolutely.
Let me tell you my hesitation. Some of the detrimental effects that we're listing, I don't think are really our purview to fix, because the fixing of the road and widening it beyond the frontage of this property gets into areas where Mr. Baker was talking about disproportionality and whether we really can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the things if we're worried about mitigating those things, I don't know that that's really legally binding, what we can do it. I guess we can throw it out there, but that's a concern of mine. I will say up front, I think it's going to be hideous with that road going big and then small again, even with curb and gutter along some of it, and it's not going to look all that great, but driving down that road now, it doesn't look too great now. And
This will be the crown jewel of that road.
yeah, that strip will be gorgeous. And so that's my hesitation. So I recognize that those are concerns that we've brought about, but I don't know that those are valid for us to consider with the conditional use permit. That's my thoughts.
Okay.
Can I just
Sure.
ask, so do we want to create something that's hideous? I mean, part of it would be improved, but
If
it
not
doesn't
necessarily.
make sense to me. And if this were a thing that had to be done, but it's, I don't know how to say that.
I agree, but I don't know how we make them widen it all the way north to 400 South. Yeah. It just doesn't seem like that's their burden to do.
And I still have issue with the traffic, because the units are the back towards 50 West. That's where most of the people are going to be parking back by the unit. They're not going to go all the way out to Main Street. They're just going to go right out the shortest route out. So, and then going out of that and having only part of that improved, another part not improved, there's hazards.
How do we mitigate them?
Yeah.
How do we mitigate?
Maybe I can ask
Mr. Baker.
a question of Jim and Andrew. Do we have any idea how much the rest of 50 West would need to be widened to have a consistent edge of asphalt from this project to the north? Is it 6 inches? Is it a foot? Do we know?
It's my understanding the right-of-way is there.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about widening the right-of-way. We're talking about widening the asphalt. And there's, I believe, north of the project frontage, there's 20 feet of asphalt currently. And so we'd be talking about an additional 10 feet of asphalt, plus curb and gutter if that's where the commission wanted to go for stormwater purposes. And if you look at the aerial photograph, you'd be doubling the amount because it's about the same width from the project frontage to 400 South as it is along their frontage. And then you also have to ask the question, what about to the south? If we're going to do the north, what about the south? So are we talking about the entire frontage all the way down to Gopher Foods? Those are things you have to consider.
Andrew, I guess part of my confusion is if this project is going to include curb, gutter, and sidewalk within the right-of-way, then going to the north wouldn't require an additional 10 feet of asphalt because they wouldn't have to put in the curb, gutter, and sidewalk. It would be a smaller additional width of asphalt, unless I'm just confusing things more for everyone.
I know the fire department's asking for 30 feet of asphalt, and that beyond the frontage of the property, that 30 feet does not exist. So that's what I do know.
Okay, so either all that additional asphalt width fronting the project is going to go on the project side, or they're going to have to do some improvement on both sides. And I don't know which, so.
Yeah. Mr. Riches, could you want to address that for us, if you can?
Sorry, I'm just sitting on my hands. I didn't want to get the wrath of Commissioner Hamilton. But no, to help out with some of these ideas, I'm sitting over here just like, so to the point of, I mean, yeah, it's ugly when you have the narrowing and then widening right there. As far as a safety idea that I had is just striping. If you create the lines on the road, regardless of whatever, this is what has been done, like what I've done in the past is just by creating the striping, people are following the stripes, not so much the edge of asphalt, right? And it's an idea. I'm not trying to solve this for you. But as for the widening, and just to address that, the right-of-way is 33 feet. So if we were to try and put a park strip and a sidewalk in that right-of-way, we wouldn't have what the fire department is requesting of 30 feet of asphalt strip. What we're talking about is like, and when we say 30 feet, that's front of curb and gutter to front of curb, right? So you still have that lip of gutter in there as a part of that. And so when we're trying to consider that we don't have that full width allowed in that 50th West there for the curb and gutter and a park strip, or the sidewalk and a park strip there, but we do have enough there for curb and gutter and the asphalt that is required. That being said, we have added some on this project. We have added some sidewalk just for routability throughout the project that is on the property that we're talking about here. But that's just more of a design thing that we can extend over the full length of it. But again, that's going to be on the property, not necessarily in the right of way that way. So in order to accommodate fire department with the 30-foot width, we would need to just have curb and gutter where we would need it to be in that way. So
is face of curb property line?
Face of curb would not be property line because you'd still have the property line is 33 feet wide. And so if we were to even just go down center of the right of way, you would still have an additional a foot on each side, essentially, that's would be undisturbed, I guess, is what I'm saying here. But yeah, because it's the curb is 6 inches wide on both sides, so that would take another foot away from so you'd be 31 feet wide from back of curb, and then a foot to the property line.
So just a reminder to the commission that state law allows you to impose conditions to mitigate, but not to eliminate. So those impacts, I didn't make the rules. You get to decide whether striping it's not going to eliminate the problem, but is it going to mitigate it? That's what you get to think about.
Who pays for the striping? The city? Right?
It'd be the developer.
Yeah.
The first time.
The first
developer
For the
is
first time, yeah. Maintenance after
And then
that would
me
be,
after that.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just checking.
All right, any other further questions for the applicant here.
I can address the
Engineer.
stormwater if you want me to, real quick.
Have at it.
Thank you.
If that will ease people's minds, let's do it.
Yeah, well, so on this site specifically, like what was being said over here about the stormwater that's being currently produced and run off onto the property, because there's not any stormwater and the way that everything is graded, it's all flowing to 50th West anyway, and there's not a storm drain system in 50th West, so we're actually just retaining all of the water on the site. So runoff is not really a concern on this of any of that, because everything is graded so that it's staying on the site and isn't even being controlled or released out to the city. It's staying on the site. To run off on the road, if we were to go back further on that portion that is outside the like that strip of asphalt where you were concerned, Commissioner, on erosion and whatever, drainage swales can be produced to try and help catch that water so it's not just flowing freely onto neighboring properties. There are methods that way. I know that like what you had mentioned about Commissioner Robinson, about this is stuff that gets addressed during the site plan review. But again, there's stuff that we can do to help mitigate that without curb and gutter along the rest of that strip there. Anyway. We're good?
I think we're good.
I think so. Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Richards.
Mr. Chair, I think, and we've talked a long way around this, I think going back to the public on both sides has been very persuasive in their concerns. I think most of what I'm hearing, and I'm kind of chuckling to myself, and this is not a shot at Commissioner Hammer in the least, but I find it interesting that we're arguing that beautifying the frontage of this property with quality road on one of the nastiest roads in the city, that causes a problem for me. Quite honestly, Melanie, I'm looking forward, if this goes forward, to if there's enough traffic on that, our friends down at the other end of the table are going to have to do something about that road. And quite honestly, that's probably not a bad idea. So much like I was discussing with the chairman, we can't get a stoplight on 1000 North and Franks Drive. We can't get a stoplight at Skyline and 36 until we can show that we're way past the need for it. Maybe this is the way past the need to do something with 50 West. So with an understanding that most of our concerns are going to be dealt with a little farther down the process, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve the request for conditional use permit by Christine Martinez representing application number P22-1172, subject to the following conditions that are in the staff report. I want to add to number 7, which talks about the full length of project frontage. I think that we need to Commissioner Robinson's point, I agree that we need to restrict it to this particular project. I think we get into too much gray area, much as I'd like to have this again all the way from end to end to be done. But I think we do want to put a requirement on there that the parking be prohibited in that particular area. Since we're doing that for fire safety and general safety, it makes no sense for us to allow parking on that as well. And I do like the thought of adding the striping. I live on just off of Skyline Drive, and the striping that's been done on Skyline has been interesting to watch people change their driving habits on. And it's not going to be perfect, and I wish we could make it perfect, but I don't believe we can. So that would be my motion.
All right, we've got a motion from Commissioner Sloan for a positive, or
Chairman?
to approve the conditional use permit. I'll get right to you. With additions to prohibit parking on that section and striping in there. Mr. Baker.
Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that the parking restriction is crystal clear, that it's only on the frontage of this project.
Correct.
That's the prohibited section.
Correct.
Thank you.
That was my intention. I didn't say it right, but that was the intention.
All right. All right. With that being said, we have a second.
I'll second it.
A second from Commissioner Robinson. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Nay.
Commissioner Proctor?
Nay.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn?
Nay.
Really? You guys are going to do this to me tonight?
I love it.
always
If we
complain
if we
about
vote
people
nay,
that
we've
can't
got to
make a
find a way to
decision.
mitigate it.
Yeah. And I see no other way to mitigate it. These are pretty good additions to add to this, but I think Commissioner Sloan's on to a point where if we show a need that we need 50 West done, and unfortunately, we just got to get it done, so I'm going to vote yay. And that one passes with a 4-3 vote. All right, that was a long discussion. Hopefully everybody's brains aren't fried there. This moves us on to number 7 on our agenda is our city council reports.
Thank you, Commissioners. We had a fairly short city council meeting, but I wanted to let you know that you are stuck with Councilman Hanson and I for another year. We did keep our same assignments from last year, so you're stuck with us. Something of interest, we did rename the competitive and lap pool at the Pratt Aquatic Center after Mel Roberts, who's been a long-term employee and of the pool and just a big coach for a long time, a lot of years. I can't remember the exact number of years, but almost as many as I've been alive or more. So just the lap pool and competitive pools are named after him. We'll retain the pool will still be the Pratt Aquatic Center. And then we did approve a temporary ordinance to remove the term group home from the general commercial area, because after we recently passed an ordinance with, you guys probably remember the ordinance we passed with the, how many people could live in the house, that one, it made it in conflict. So we passed a temporary ordinance, and you should get first look next meeting at an actual ordinance. So it'll go through the normal process now, but we needed something like a stopgap in the meantime. And then one last thing is next week, the mayor has made appointments to the Planning and Zoning Commission. You're down a commissioner, but we will approve those next week at our city council meeting.
How many? 1 or 2? It's just one, isn't it?
Well, you're down one, but so depending. It's not a secret? Okay, so when Commissioner Goches, who is an alternate, moves to be a regular person, then there will be the appointment of an alternate also, who I think is here in the audience.
Does he still want to do it?
He still says yes. So that's all I have for you. Any questions for me?
Can we make public comment on your appointee?
Sure, go for it.
Actually, is this a council appointee or is it mayor?
Mayor.
Okay, thank you. That's all
Okay.
I'll say everything else under my breath.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Manzione. All right, brings us up to number 8 on our agenda is a review and approval of Planning Commission minutes for the meeting held on December 14th, 2022. I know it was a long time ago, but I'll entertain a motion if there are no corrections or additions to our minutes.
Motion to approve.
Sounds like Mr. Hanson has an approval. We got a motion to approve from Commissioner Proctor. Got a second?
I'll second.
A second from Commissioner Hammer. Commissioner Hammer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Proctor?
Aye.
Commissioner Sloan?
Aye.
Commissioner Robinson?
Aye.
Commissioner Jensen?
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn?
Aye.
I am Chairman Hamilton. I also vote aye on that one. And seeing Mr. Bolzer approach the podium, he's got something important to say.
I don't know how important, but we're at the end of your meeting, so before you adjourned, I just wanted to address one thing. As the commission is aware, we do monthly training, which would typically, well, I shouldn't say typically, because we've done it at both first and second meetings of the month. For this month, where we're not doing it tonight, it would be scheduled for your next meeting in 2 weeks. As the commission is also aware, with the change a couple of years ago, the state code that requires a minimum hour of training, and then the amendments this last year that specified a specific type of training of the powers and duties that you may recall going through not too long ago, last spring. That is a yearly requirement, regardless of whether you're new or not. So although Commissioner Proctor is freshly aware of that training, having recently done it when he joined the commission, he gets to do it again, as do you all. So for the purpose of training in January, we have some resources where you can do some online training to accomplish that goal. So for the purpose of training in January, I will be simply emailing you some information. If you will complete those trainings and then just forward us the certificate of completion, we will call that good for January. And it will also meet that state code requirement. So keep an eye on your emails, and you will very soon see some links to some online training that is very good. I think it is. I don't know what you feel having recently done it, but I think it's very good training, and we'll accomplish that for the purpose of January's training. Thank you.
And just while you're up here, sounds like we maybe need some exercise and some help with findings of fact and things that we were challenged with tonight. Maybe we can have some exercises to help us out for a training.
Sure. February, we're happy to do conditional use permits. They're certainly a regular topic that's worthy of discussion. Probably do, because I'm not sure we did one for conditional uses specifically in 2022. This is probably a good one to refresh on.
Some movie stuff in it?
What's that?
You have some movie
Yeah,
stuff
movie
in it?
trivia.
I'll come up with something to make it interesting for you. I try to anyway. I don't know if you like it or not. But we'll come up with something for you to address conditional uses in February. And I don't know that you're quite as far off as you think you are, because I think you actually do quite well with findings of fact and conditions and findings. So it may be something that when an item is a little contentious, that you may not quite realize what you're doing, but you actually do better than I think you do. So yes, we're happy to provide that for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And if you all got the email from Michelle Pitt, also your Open Meetings Act, get that training done and sent back over to her.
There is a test at the end. If you
There
haven't
is a
done it.
test.
There is a test.
Don't mess it up.
Also, your yearly disclosure statements that you may have
Yes.
seen from Michelle Pitt as well. If you have a potential conflict of interest, classic example, if you own a business here in town, you have to have a business license through the city, so there's a potential conflict through that relationship. But we just have to file a yearly disclosure statement. So if you've done it before, you still have to do it again. It's once a year. So those are due imminently. So if you need to do one, please do it as soon as possible. You're welcome to send it directly back to Michelle, or give it to me, and I will provide it to her. Thank you.
And one question while we're on that.
Absolutely.
Do they have to be notarized by a notary, or can we just?
My initial feeling is if she set it up with a notary on there, it probably should be, but I don't know what the legal
I just dropped mine
ramification
off in
is.
the office and they notarize it right there.
Okay.
So you don't have
They
to go
can
find
notarize
it.
it.
Oh, so
Even
just
better.
bring it in.
Okay.
There's 2 or 3 in the building.
I prepared the form, so if there's a notary on it, it's required.
Okay.
There you go.
Perfect. There's good answers for
I
us
like
all.
that
so
answer.
Thank you. All right. With that having been said, is there any other business to discuss? Looks like not on our agenda, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you, Commissioner